Welcome to the Psychic Time Traveler podcast. I am a psychic who has seen over 80 of my past, present, and future lives, and it is my mission to teach people about the healing power of seeing your other lives. Today we welcome acupuncturist Tracy Dundon to the Psychic Time Traveler podcast. Tracy is a registered acupuncturist with a Bachelor of Health Science in Traditional Chinese Medicine from the University of Technology in Sydney and has been practicing for 11 years. Tracy is also an energy healer and has studied sound healing. Through acupuncture and using her intuition, she is connected to her own means of channeling energy to help people release residual trauma and retrieve lost parts of themselves from present to past lives in order to help them on their evolution. Hi, Tracy. Welcome to our podcast. Of all the podcasts I've got planned or have done, I think I'm the most excited about this one because you were at the very start of my journey when I had no idea what was going on originally. And you're a big part in your healing work, was a big part in opening up that psychic ability in me. So it's an absolute honor to have you on the program. So thank you.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Ashley. And amazing experience for you to have with acupuncture. And I'm really glad to have been a part of it. And it's so
Yeah.
exciting to see, in 3 years, what's happened
I've
for you.
never
It's
predicted this.
incredible.
Yeah. I know I'm
Yeah.
a psychic, but I didn't know it at the time, and I could never in a million years have predicted that going to acupuncture would
Yeah.
help start this journey for me. It's been really incredible.
Yeah. You started seeing me for
Yeah, I started seeing you for acupuncture in 2021. I started 2021, obviously to help resolve these issues. I was just desperate for anything to help me. Oh, Tracy, it definitely wasn't to have a spiritual experience. I had no idea that that was going to happen. Zero clue. At that time in my life, I had been trying for a baby for quite a long time. And I was also having a lot of menstrual issue problems.
Yep. Yep.
Really,
I
really, really
remember.
bad. And so I just realized that I need to do something to fix this because one, I'll never have a baby if I do. And two, I'm obviously very ill and I'd been trying things and I learned a few years earlier than that Western medicine's not always the answer to all our problems. I've actually had earlier in my life, in my late 20s, quite negative experience with some Western doctors.
Hmm.
But now I see that as a really positive thing to happen to my life because it made me seek alternative medicine and opened me up to a whole new world of healing. So yeah, I did a lot of research about how I could heal. I've got polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I was just looking for practitioners,
Yeah.
who could help me out basically. I
Yeah.
came across a PCOS Facebook page that was based on the Newcastle, Sydney area, and I'd seen people mention that people have been mentioning that acupuncture had helped them fall pregnant and help them with their period issues and things, and I was just desperate. I was just willing to try anything.
A lot of people end up coming for acupuncture is that we're kind of their last resort.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
In all honesty, it was just
and
like
that's
it wasn't.
cool.
Yeah, it wasn't like your last resort, my last resort, but it was
Yeah.
like I would just try anything and
Yeah.
everything
Yeah. Yep.
because not to gross the listeners out, like I had the most horrendous periods ever. Like the doctors didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do to help me. I, yeah, I was having a lot of issues medically with my, sort of fertility and menstrual cycle. So I was trying everything and anything. And I'd actually been to a fertility specialist in the Junction, which is where I met you, a suburb of Newcastle. And she is touted as one of the best fertility experts in the country, but she was
Hmm.
quite rude to me. And
Mm.
she didn't really explain it to me at the time,
Yep.
but she was going to perform a procedure on me that would actually make it incapable for me to have children. So
Right.
at the time, I was having horrendous periods, like nothing, like no doctor
Yep.
could work it out. And when I did go to doctors, they were quite rude and just said, "It's all your fault, you're fat."
Yeah.
But I said, "Well, actually, I've had issues with, this since I was 11 and I
Yep.
was quite skinny for half of my life. So it can't just be that."
Yeah. It's an easy one for people to go to.
Yeah.
It's a cheap
It
shot, quite frankly.
it is, but I'm sort of grateful. Well, I'm
Mm.
grateful for a lot of reasons that
Yep.
she was quite rude to me because one, I was like, no, I need to look for other help. And
Yep.
two, obviously, I now have a baby. So if I listen to her advice, like most people do, most people trust in Western doctors and do what they say without
Yep.
researching it or anything like that.
Yep.
Luckily, I had researched it and realized, I would have been incapable of having children because she was going to do a procedure where she would burn away the lining of my uterus, which would make it very difficult to fall pregnant.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was on a PCOS Facebook page based in where we live, Newcastle, and people were talking about how acupuncture helps that sort of stuff. And your name came up more than once.
Mm.
And I was like, well, multiple people are talking about you. You must be good.
Right.
And then because I was so sort of turned away from Western medicine and I'd also had a few bad bad run-ins, I suppose, with doctors. It takes me a lot to pick a doctor
Yeah.
because of some of the experiences I've had.
Yeah.
I had adrenal fatigue really badly about 10 years ago. And
Mm.
that's where I sort of discovered that Western doctors aren't sometimes all they're cracked up to be when they
Not always.
not
Yeah.
always. Sometimes, look, some of them are very good, and I've had
Yep.
a lot of
Yeah.
help, but there's some that's not
Acupuncturists
so
too,
great.
like we have our good and bad days, but yeah, the system's broken,
Yeah,
and we do need to take an integrative, holistic approach. I think for all health,
yeah,
I will sometimes recommend clients get checked out medically and work
yeah. I'm
with
by no means,
myself
by the
or a
way, everyone.
naturopath, or
By no
yeah,
means saying that
yeah,
Western
but it's
doctors
not
are.
always the right
n-
path. It's not,
No, I
and
think
it
what you
is
said,
it.
integrative. You need to look at
Yeah,
all the aspects,
yeah.
not just medical doctors. So I was thinking I had success when I had adrenal fatigue about 10 years ago when I'd gone to a doctor and I said, I need some help with this. I can't get out of bed. I can't get to work. And I want to go to work. And they thought I was using it as an excuse to get out of work. I was like, I've got to do
Mm,
this myself. And I ended up healing myself through researching it and just buying supplements of iHerb. But then I
mm.
thought, I need some help. I can't keep doing all this on myself. So I found a naturopath who's a friend of yours. I didn't know at that time. And you
Yeah,
both worked in the
professional
same
colleague.
building.
Yeah, yep,
So I just thought, this is just kismet. This is work perfect. So I can go to Renee and then I can go to you. So I just
yep.
thought, yeah, this is
Meant
meant to
to
be. And that's
be.
how I ended up
Yeah,
on your table. Definitely wasn't to have psychic messages come through. I didn't think that was going to
no,
happen.
yeah, and it wasn't my intention, becoming an acupuncturist. Obviously, that stuff would start happening in
Yeah.
treatment room either. But you're definitely a special case.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'd love to know what you experienced during your acupuncture sessions. Um,
Um, I'm going to actually ask you what you remember
yeah,
because unfortunately I write all my visions down.
yeah,
And actually, sometimes I've actually transitioned to doing voice memos
yeah. That's a good
of them.
idea. Yeah,
It's because I've had so many. The
yeah,
act of actually going back and revisiting it is draining,
yeah.
and I've now learnt that's because the whole reason I'm going through this experience, or people go through this experience,
Mm,
is to let go of it.
yeah.
So it's like I don't really want to revisit it, but I know that I have to
Mm,
revisit it to teach others about it, and people are
yeah,
quite interested in it. But
yeah.
because I didn't know what was happening, I didn't
Mm,
write the first visions down, and my first visions were
yeah,
on your table. So
yeah. Wow,
I just wanted
amazing.
to, yeah, it's pretty cool. Just wanted to say to my listeners too that
Yeah,
if you do have any dreams that feel like there's a message or visions, if you think that you're imagining something and it's just your imagination, but there's something more going on, write it down because that's how your psychic ability works. It works through your imagination. You're probably not daydreaming. You're probably
yeah.
accessing a
Well,
past life or something like that. So please,
yeah,
if you can learn from my lesson, please write it down. But I guess what I was going to say to you is when I came to you, one, I didn't realize I was going to have psychic visions. And two, I didn't realize that they would go from, I had like a few on your table and I had a couple in a dream before that. So I had about five by the time I sort of was seeing you. I didn't realize it would multiply to nearly 90 now. in 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was like, when it was first happening, I didn't think to write it down. So yeah, I would love to see what you remember, and I'll help you
Yeah.
fill in the blanks.
Yeah, well, I clearly remember why you came initially and work on women's health,
Yeah,
fertility, and PCOS. And yes, acupuncture is a great tool to help support that. And yeah, I remember you told me were having visions during the sessions. Almost every time you
yeah,
came, you'd have one or two things would happen during having acupuncture. And look, sometimes it happens with people. You're definitely an exception in terms of the level of opening up that you've had.
yeah,
But yeah, I remember one time you told me you saw your child. You're obviously not yet born
yeah,
child. Another time you saw a past life. So you were in like ancient Rome. You were in a room indoors. It was like
yeah.
ancient Rome, and you were clearly had like a water. It was like a water carafe, like a vase
That's
carafe,
exactly
a
what it
piece
was.
of earthenware, sort of
Yeah,
for
you've got a good
water.
memory. That's exactly what it
I don't.
was.
I remember. I don't think it was. There was something about it. I can't remember, but it had something to do connected to your life then, around your current issues
It
with your
did. It
issues
actually,
with your fertility issues. I said fertility issues. There was something about your womanhood or being a mother, or something to do with reproductive organs that had happened in that life that was
yeah.
obviously carrying through.
Yeah, and actually, that vision actually showed me that I'm not as bad at the moment. Pregnancy and just the visions I've been having has actually healed a lot of that. But it showed me that one of the issues I was having that I was unaware of, that I was gluten intolerant and
Right,
I was dairy intolerant. And
right.
the lady who came through, that was a past life. So that was my first ever vision, Tracy, I had that wasn't a
Wow.
dream.
Yeah,
And I
right.
wanted to say
It
to
was
you that
clear that this is real. Like, it's not a dream.
yeah, yeah. So
It's like a waking dream.
I
Yeah.
had dreams before. So the way my journey started is that, again, I knew that I had to work on this stuff, and I had my very first vision at the start of 2019, and I'd found this beautiful Australian man named Michael Seeley on YouTube. He's massive on YouTube. He's got hundreds of thousands of followers, and he does sleep hypnosis tracks. And he had a past life regression one, and I thought, oh, this will be sort of cool to listen to. And I listened to it, and nothing happened because I had this fear in me that I don't know what will
Yeah.
come through, because it's, to
Yeah.
me at the time, it's not scary now, but I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know what I'll see and stuff. So nothing
Yeah.
came through. And then the next day, because it was like I was on holidays at the time, and I was quite lethargic at the time. And when I started getting my psychic ability years ago, they basically, I would be in a state of a coma for to have
Yeah.
the visions.
To
And I
come
think it's
through.
because
Yeah.
my
Like a
soul guides knew
trance.
that I was, yes, exactly
Yeah.
like that, like
Yeah.
Edgar Casey. My soul guides knew that I had this fear of what was going on. I was terrified. So they basically had to pin me to the bed to give me
Mm-hmm.
the visions.
Ah,
Yeah, and the first so the second day I found another hypnosis track of his, and it was unblocking subconscious blocks.
yeah.
And I wasn't thinking about having a past life regression, and I had one, and it was about Joseph, who is the incarnation that is the strongest link to me as Ashley. So when you do have past life regressions, or your problems in your life, there are a bunch of other incarnations that are very closely tied to you, more so than others. And he's got the biggest link
For
with
you, it's a
me
big
in
one.
terms of lessons and things. So I saw that life, and he was a rear admiral in the British Navy. I didn't know that at the time. I just saw this guy that was sort of dressed up like you would think,
Mm,
like sort of like Captain Cook days, with the tricorn or bicorn hat or whatever he had
mm,
on, and I wasn't really sure what was going on. And then a year after that or so, I had a random dream again, where it was like a comatose dream, where I had been, I was in World War I. I was a British soldier, and I've had a lot of problems with my right ear in my life. And coincidentally, this is going to make sense in a minute, I've had problems where I've had my head dunked in mud for some reason.
mm,
Been on holiday, and I've in Fiji, and I got stuck in this like muddy river and other things. Anyway,
mm.
I saw it really clearly that I'd gotten shot just behind my right ear, and I had like a tin hat on that they wore, the Brits wore at that time, and it sort of went askew. And as I was dying, the right side of my face was sinking into the mud in the trenches, and my ear was filling up with mud. So, and I had that.
Brought that with you through.
Yeah,
It's so bizarre. I
it
love
is.
because you kind of fill in the gaps in, I'm doing this work from the other end.
Yeah,
Like I'm facilitating this from the other end, and having someone like you who so clearly, I have a couple of clients who will have some similar impressions. They'll have visions,
yeah, that's so cool.
but most people don't. I
Yeah,
have to trust the work, and I can get, like, sometimes I'll get an impression like that, like I'll feel like something was holding you down or you were shot, like it feels, and it, to me, I'm like, am I making this up? But it's like, no,
you do feel like you're making
I'm
it up.
just interpreting exactly what I'm sensing, because I don't have visions.
Yeah,
I have visceral, I feel everything. Like
yeah,
I literally, like I pulled it. I got to the point where I start to do work on myself sometimes, and like I've pulled an arrow out of myself.
wow,
It was just so distinct that that's what I was doing. I had this really bad
yeah.
back, shoulder, neck pain going on, and I had some work done on it,
I've been shot in my
and
right shoulder as well. That was one of
I've
my
done,
first visions.
sort of things sometimes when I'm working with clients and they come in and because sometimes physical problems, it's not always the case, but sometimes if they're not going away and clients start to get, inquire
Yeah,
and intuitive about it, it's held in their energy field, this past life
yeah,
stuff. And that's where even though I haven't recalled my own, apart from, like I said, I have pulled an arrow out of myself.
yeah,
I start to clearly get a sense, like this isn't like an arrow. If I do that on even myself, it's not something that can happen in this life. And like you
yeah.
saw a vase that it's just, they're not around these days, and you may
No,
never have known what that was, but you can get an encyclopedia, or these days the online
yeah,
encyclopedia, and find out, what's
yeah.
happened.
I was going to say, I'll say a couple of things based on what you just said there. The first thing is that, people just think that we're human beings, but we're actually psychic beings. As a psychic being, as an energy source, or a light being, or whatever you want to call it, we obviously don't have mouths to talk. So we all have different forms of communication as a light being. Some focus
Yeah.
on vision,
Yep.
some focus on the written word. So people are really
Yep.
good at automatic writing, and then some be
Mm-hmm.
on feeling and stuff. So
Yep.
your psychic vision is no, less than mine.
No,
That's
it's
just how your
different.
higher self communicates.
Best.
That's
It's
their
how
form
it
of
best.
communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, it's just as valid as my method. It's just that
Mm,
it's like speaking a different language, I suppose. Some higher selves prefer the visual communication. Some higher
absolutely.
selves
And
prefer,
we weren't told about these
sensing and
languages.
things.
Yeah.
No, and I had to sort of discover this, as my psychic ability progressed. I discovered this, but yeah. Anyway, back to the first one.
Yeah.
It
The
was the
vase
first one that I'd ever had that was
water
just like a
carrier
random
thing.
vision, and I've been thinking about this lately because I knew that this podcast was coming up, and I was
Yeah.
thinking, you know, we had a connection straight away, but for me to be so open with you, I went in there experiencing acupuncture, and I was having all these weird and wonderful visions, but I just knew straight away. I didn't even think about it. I never even thought about it. The first time I've thought about it is actually now. I never hesitated to tell you what was going on. It just came out of my mouth, and I told you, probably because I was like, I didn't know what to expect. I was like, is everyone who has acupuncture, is this what's happening to them?
Yeah. No,
Yeah, but it was also that I just had that
you were
instinctive trust
ready.
with you.
Yeah. And I think that's it as people. I think some people vibrationally you're ready, and someone else is a bit of someone that is the key, that you're ready and you're ready to go through the door, but you need someone to open the door.
You definitely
Or,
opened the door.
yeah. And for some people, it's just like full on. And yeah,
Yeah,
and this is what happens occasionally. Not everyone, I just want to say to your listeners, not everyone, the majority of people that come for acupuncture aren't going to have that. level of experience, but it is opening you up and reconnecting you to your source and your blueprint. It is very powerful.
Yeah.
Big part of the reason I've ended up doing this happening in my disability is a lot of it developed through practicing acupuncture and having acupuncture. For me, it's how I
Yeah.
opened up energetically. So it is powerful, and the different modalities are going to work for different people with this stuff.
Very true.
And also just you being on the path, doing all your things, meditation, getting healthier,
Yeah. Oh no, the
and
meditation didn't come till later. You were
yeah,
honestly, well, it
it
was
was
you
the
and the fact that
kickstart
I
for
was about
you.
to meet myself in another body, and
Yeah,
but that was after you. But I always thought maybe there was some link that because we lived like a town apart, so there was me in another body living in a town apart from me for years,
yeah,
you
wow.
know. And I was thinking maybe we've crossed paths, because we both lived in Newcastle at the same time as well. Um, Maybe we've crossed paths, and that's something like that's why it was activated so early. Because I think I started seeing you in January of that year, but I didn't have the spiritual awakening through her until May.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember when you came back to see me and told me about that. You'd had
yeah,
that experience and that you started to have more of these past life recollections since
yeah,
you'd seen me and
but
had some
actually,
more interesting encounters on the table.
yeah, yes, I did. I think what had happened was it was definitely a big part of you opening the door, but also I had those thoughts. "Oh, I wonder if I've crossed paths there anyway." Like I said, I've got lots and lots of journals because I
Mm,
write down my visions, and I was not long ago, a couple of months ago, I was trying to find, yeah, about May of this year, I was trying to find an empty journal to start writing more stuff in, and I found one, and I thought, oh, this will be good because the title on the front of the journal is "Good Things Are Happening." Anyway, I opened it, and to see if I had anything written in there. I'd filled in one page, and on that one page, and I'd written in this journal because the date was in there. Was the year before I had met her, and in massive letters was her name, her full name, and her phone number because I'd found out
my
about her.
goodness.
I know. She was doing some make a drum workshop or something like that. And I was like, "You're going to be joking." So that was my answer. So I think even just having
Wow.
that connection of
Yeah.
connecting with another one of my incarnations, not even like physically, but that was like I think, and that was in December of 2020, and
Yeah.
I saw you in 2021 of
Yeah.
January, and
Yeah.
that's when the vision started. So I think it was a lot to do with you, but it was also a lot to do with I'd somehow made a connection to my other incarnation, even if it wasn't
Mm,
physical. So yeah, it was like quite astounding what was happening. I didn't really know what was happening, but yeah, the first vision I had, like I said, it helped me realize I was gluten intolerant and dairy intolerant because um, I was this very, very beautiful ancient Roman lady, and it was linked to my sacral chakra. I know a lot
yeah,
about the
right.
chakras now, but I didn't know
Yeah,
much at the
yeah,
time. And obviously, you were working with those sort of
yeah.
energy
And it's sometimes I'll
meridians.
sense into that. Yeah, like the
Yeah,
channels in the chakras. Sometimes I'll get a really clear thing with someone, we'll shift something in a channel system or the chakras as well. And yeah, this is
yeah,
what happens with people like you. And it makes sense with fertility, right?
yeah, exactly. Because that's the sacral. I mean, that's the womb is the sacral
It's a
chakra.
big
So
one. Yeah.
yeah, so it makes total sense, and this is what you're a big part in helping me conceive my child too, because I just did a podcast and I went through a QHHT thing with this lovely lady called Elizabeth, and she was the last piece of the puzzle for me actually falling pregnant and giving birth, but
Mm,
the fertility journey definitely like breaking the infertility definitely started with you, and you were doing, obviously I was there to fall pregnant and get rid of the period
mm.
problem, so you were working a lot with that energy
Yeah.
center, and
And on a
yeah, I was
very
showing.
practical acupuncture channel level, but this just shows you what it does. It taps into the energy blueprint
Yeah,
in the body.
and it's
And a
proof.
lot of this stuff, it's proof that a lot of this isn't just your blood glucose levels. Like, yeah, you
Yes,
want to be
yeah,
healthy.
or the fact
But
that you're fat.
I have to say, I see a lot of clients with PCOS, they get pregnant easier than other people. A lot of it's, and I'm not saying this to women, it's yes, sometimes there are practical things that need to be done, and they sometimes do need a surgery or
Yeah.
endo to clear out some endo or something, But the mind, and it's a spirit in Chinese medicine. Our brain is in our consciousness.
Yeah.
It's our heart, our spirit, resides in everything that we think, and so the movement of energy is so important. So our headspace, is so important in terms of fertility and everything else.
Yeah, that's so true. But, like we were saying also, it also proves that it's just not linked to the current life. Like you
Oh
said, it's
my
not just linked
God.
to blood
Yeah.
glucose levels. It can be linked to, multiple incarnations of
Well,
things that had happened. And
can
this
you
wasn't
remember
like,
what happened in that life? Because you said you were a beautiful woman in ancient Rome, and I
yeah.
remember you telling me about the room and the water jug thing that
Yeah, well,
you saw on the
the
table.
water jug actually was holding milk, and it was an earthenware
Right.
thing, and I remember
That's
saying to
right.
you, I was like, "Does it?" Because she showed me very clearly. First, she showed me, like, sort of beads of wheat, I would say, like ground
Yeah.
up wheat sort of flowing out of her hands,
Yeah.
and then she showed me pouring the milk out of this earthenware jug, and I was like,
Oh,
"Did they even put milk in those things? I don't know," it was like a terracotta pot thing, like a terracotta
so literal,
urn.
really. But
Yeah, like clay, and I was like,
yeah.
yeah, it's probably
Wow.
a very literal interpretation. And then I just got this knowing that it was linked to, gluten intolerance and dairy intolerance. And she was just showing it these are things that she consumed in her life that are now affecting me. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
did straight away. I eating gluten, I stopped eating dairy, and I had a massive improvement in my health. Massive improvement in my health, and I didn't realize at the time too. It also helped massively improve my psychic ability and
Like,
unblocked a lot
yeah.
of things as well. So that was the sort of first thing she showed me. But in terms of her beauty, this is important why I mention this because I could see that I was this beautiful woman, very beautiful woman, and I have had trouble in my life as actually you know, what's the word? In the past. Now I'm
Mm,
okay with myself. I've got a lot of self love, but I didn't have any self love when I met
yeah.
you at the time. I didn't even know what self love was. And, I did not think I was very attractive. And I had
Yeah.
in my younger years when I was skinnier, had been extremely attractive. And I just thought now that, oh, I'm fat, so I'm ugly. But she was showing me that, it's not necessarily a good thing to always be extremely attractive. What had happened to her, she was so attractive that she was forced into a marriage with some sort of very important figure in Roman times. And I remember she showed me like she had this bracelet that went from her fingers right up to her arm. I think she was just trying to show me things to Google to say, is this,
This is the era.
yeah,
Yeah.
or am I imagining this or is this really happening?
Yeah.
Because that's what
Yeah.
happens. Like I get visions in my head of things that I've never seen before or words. I
Yeah.
mean, I even said to you, I had one a few hours ago. I had a past life regression,
Yeah.
and I had words, Hindu words that I'd never heard before in my head. I'm like, are they even Hindu? And then when I Googled it,
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
Hindu words, and I'm like, there's no way
Yeah.
I could have known that.
Yeah.
No
I've
way.
had this, I've had something similar. I don't have the experiences like you have, but I've had a couple of experiences like that where, yeah, I've had something shown to me in a different way, and I've gone, what is that? I've never heard of it. And I've looked it
Yeah,
up and gone, I've never, ever heard of that, but it's real.
it's because you
It's
just
in the
know.
history books.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all right. Yeah, because it's just part of you because you just remember. But
Mm.
yeah, oh, that's right. So she'd show me that too because she was sort of using it as an analogy that she'd been made prisoner by this horrible husband by her beauty. She was literally become like a sex slave and a
Mm.
prisoner. Like her beauty had imprisoned her to
Yeah,
this
right.
awful husband that
Creep.
she didn't want to be. Yeah, creep that she didn't want to be with. It was just like
Yeah,
you're
she
very
was
beautiful.
basically a
I'm very rich.
slave.
You're going to be
Yeah,
my wife. There's
yeah.
no way out of it. This is what's going to
That's
happen.
your life.
Yeah, and I guess that's when I was starting to
It's
beauty can be a prison, especially in those days it was showing in, and I guess that's when it was starting to peel back those layers of self-worth and self-love and me learning about that and learning why I had those hang-ups about beauty and things, because I never got her name. I get most of their names, which I think is unusual, but I never got hers. And I think she was showing me that being beautiful is not all it's cracked up to be,
yeah.
So don't be so,
Wow.
because I was so fixated on it. I was so fixated on I
Yeah,
could never be
right.
beautiful if I'm fat. And
Yeah,
that was a big part of my life for many, 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 many. I
yeah,
just had this, that was probably my biggest worry other than falling pregnant. That
yeah,
was the thing that I would worry about the most, that
yeah.
I'm like nothing to people because I'm fat and that means I'm ugly. So
Oh,
she was showing me that. So yeah, that was quite revealing. But yeah, that was like the first vision I had on your table.
yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Did you remember any others I had?
I remember you had a couple of other, like there was probably more. I've got my notes locked away because I now have digital files.
Yep.
I swapped over in the last year or two. But I remember something happening one day where you had mentioned you'd had a sore shoulder. So we were
Yep.
still working on your women's health. But I said, oh, let's have a look. You know, it was really giving you some grief. And we
Yep.
talked a bit about it. And I got in there and I straight away sensed something energetic. And so did you.
Yeah.
So I've done it practically with acupuncture, but I also, like, I will lay my hands on and feel. And sometimes
Yep.
I press the points and I can feel energy shifting. And then I don't know if I started to sense something first or you did, but there was some kind of physical trauma associated with that shoulder
Yeah.
injury there.
I think
I
with
started
that
to
one
clear
I
the
started to
energy.
first. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just energetically was feeling it. I wasn't like, I don't have visions for the client, but I feel stuff. And sometimes it can get quite, I can really 3-dimensionally get quite an image from what I feel, the sense of
Yeah.
what's happening, like that the person's, it's been a physical trauma,
Well, you're
you
right on the
know,
money
in
about
that,
that.
you know, and I can basically, from where the injury is, and because I work with the body a lot, from my practical knowledge as well, but the 3-dimensional way that I feel stuff, and you know, I feel it in my body as well. Sometimes I don't just feel it from the client. I literally
Yep.
will. It's almost like I embody what's happened, and so
Yep.
I physically feel it, and so I can almost draw a picture of what's position the body's in, and that gives you a sense of what may have happened to it. And so in that case, your shoulder had come from some kind of violent trauma. Was what
Yep.
I
Yeah. Yep.
you basically had a much, pretty clear picture from it.
Yeah, you're right. It was definitely a violent trauma. So in that instance, I had a very clear past life regression of I was a Chinese man and I was running from these guys in suits and they were Chinese triads basically. And
Yeah,
we come to
wow.
this large bowl of water and I think it was like a water tower. It wasn't
Right.
even like, it was either like on a dock or a water tower because I just remember having these sort of concrete underneath my feet. So
Yeah.
it could have been the top of a water tower, or it could have been, the docks
Yeah.
of something. And I remember, I was being pushed. They were trying to force me into the water. I was being murdered. And, when you are trying to stop someone from pushing you, not that I've ever had to do that, not in this
Yeah.
life, but
Yeah, but she
I was just,
sensed it.
yeah, I was digging my heels
Yeah.
in, trying not to be pushed. And when you try to do that, when you dig
Trying
your
to save
heels
your own
in,
life.
you can feel it in your shoulders because you're trying to weigh yourself down into the
Yeah.
earth, sort of thing. And that's where the shoulder stuff would come. And the final push was on my right shoulder into the water, and I drowned. So that was that life. But I hadn't told you that I'd actually had later on, I've had more visions associated with that life that
Yeah.
filled in the picture a bit more. So it's a shame that I didn't write it all
Wow.
down because I even had his name and stuff, and I know that his language that he spoke, it wasn't Mandarin, it was a very specific dialect. Because I remember that
Right.
word, I don't know what it was, but the word came to me, and
Cantonese.
I never heard of it. No, it wasn't
Yeah.
Cantonese. It was something very specific, and
Yeah.
I'd written it down and googled it, and it said it
Yeah.
was a specific
Yeah.
Chinese dialect. It's something to do. There was the word Zhao in there for some reason.
Yeah.
ZHOU. I don't know what that means, but there was something to do with that. But basically, the story happened was this is how I got murdered. So my family ran a Chinese restaurant. I know that sounds very stereotypical, but I did. But I love Chinese food. I know everyone does. I was like, oh, you beauty. And I
Yeah.
could see myself at the woks making the food and stuff, and they'd run into debt. They were, couldn't pay their rent, whatever. The business was losing a lot of money. I've always, as Ashley, been extremely all about family and do anything to help my family. And I'd gone to these loan sharks for a
Yeah.
loan. who were Chinese
Yeah.
triads.
Right.
And I did not have the money to pay them back, which that's why I was murdered. And later on, when I had the vision, I actually saw myself
Wow.
drowning and had the feeling of drowning, and that's some asthma problems I've had in this life and fear of water. There's a few lives that are linked to my fear of water, including I used to have a phobia about whales that I'd cured through a past life memory that story's on my Facebook page, Psychic Time Traveler. But from a very young age, I grew up on a massive lake. You know where it is because it's next to
Yep.
Newcastle, Lake
Yep.
Macquarie. And from a very young age, I'd actually had an experience when I was 4 where I was walking along the jetty and I fell in and I nearly drowned. And then I refused to go into the water. And then from about 4 to 7, I would wake up and I would be tied up in my sheets because I thought I was drowning. And I just thought it was to do with me having that experience, but
Yeah.
it was to do with a lot of other things, including this man drowning. And I'd also seen after he drowned, I've also saw him rise out of his body and sort of watch his body float to the bottom of the ocean after he had died. So
Yeah.
that's what happened
Very cool.
with him.
Not
I
cool,
don't,
but cool.
yeah, a lot of the later ones, most of the later ones, I've learnt like a valuable life lesson, or even with the ancient Roman lady, I learned a valuable life lesson that,
Yeah.
money's not everything,
Well,
beauty's not everything. But I'm not really sure now to think of it what the lesson was. I
I think
think,
that's why this stuff happens.
yeah,
Well, the lesson was also about your fertility. It was also just learning, but clearing,
yeah.
carrying
But I'm
on.
not sure what the message with the Chinese guy was. Maybe don't do too much for your family, because in the past, I have
Right.
tended to do too
Yeah.
much for them.
Or maybe just to have remembered that, and that you, for whatever reason,
Yeah, yeah.
your
Well,
shoulder.
maybe it was just all linked to the shoulder, really,
Yeah.
with that,
I just love that
that
you've
trauma
had
there.
these really clear memories because of, from my end of the work that has evolved for me, even outside of acupuncture. I do this work without acupuncture, really, but sometimes it will come on while I'm needling clients.
Yeah,
Sometimes it'll start when they walk in a room, or just some point during treatment, to know from your end what I sense. That,
yeah,
because I sense that, but it's so hard to to say this is what's happening. But it's like you just have to trust, because often, that you were talking about the lessons. I
yeah,
was speaking to a client this week, that I was working with, and I'm like, the lessons are going to come. I said that you don't just trust it. You will, once you're through it,
yeah,
it will, like, the penny will drop
yeah.
when you're in the next phase, kind of thing. It's like, oh, right, it all kind of comes together
Yeah,
down the track. And
he's
we
actually come through and just told me the lesson. So my incarnations come through and tell me things, and I see
yeah,
them and I can
wow,
hear things, and I can even hear it in his accent. And he said, "Don't get caught out." So I
right.
guess what he means by that is that,
Don't
you
put
know,
yourself in compromising.
exactly.
Don't deal with gangsters, even if
No,
your family's in trouble, you find another way.
yeah,
Yeah,
it would have been better for the
close
restaurant to
the
go under.
restaurant. Yeah, yeah.
They lost their
You
son.
wouldn't have died. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
not and I don't think the family ever got closure. They didn't. I'm
Well,
not seeing it,
yeah,
but
they wouldn't have
I'm
known what
feeling that
happened. They may
I
have
was never
always.
found.
Is that sad? Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, these things happen too, don't they? Mysteries.
yeah. It's crazy. And then I'm really happy that you're talking about this energy work because I feel like at the time when I was going through this spiritual transformation, you were too. Before
That
we did the
work was just
podcast,
evolving. Yeah.
yeah, before we did the podcast, I asked you if you wanted to talk about the energy healing because when you started doing that on me 3 years ago,
Yeah.
yeah, you were very new to it and you were a bit hesitant to do, and you were open with me, but even with me, I think at first you're a bit hesitant. And you said, "Look, I'm feeling things, I'm sensing things. Do you want me to have a go of it?" And I was like, "Hell yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
go for it." I'm
And
just
it's
really happy that
clients
it's
like you.
evolved.
Yeah. Well, it's clients like you that have helped that to happen.
Oh,
Because,
my
yeah,
pleasure.
you've got to be careful. It's kind of like you're undercover. It's like we're all
Yeah,
a bit undercover, because it is so, we can't scientifically prove this stuff yet.
yep,
And, I'm past caring about that because there's
yep,
enough of us connecting. And I do have clients. It's awkward when sometimes the client is you know, I don't know if they're going to be open to it, but something's clearly coming through. And I kind of almost always, at this point now, trust it more to just broach it. And then I
Yeah.
sometimes go, oh, should I have done that with that acupuncture client? Like they might have been coming to me for some time and just acupuncture work, you know, and then something will come up one day that I feel I
Yeah.
need to work with that way.
Yeah, but I'm really grateful that you started that process on me because you hit on a lot of stuff. As you said, I came back to in that time because I was going to you for several months. And
Mm.
may I point out to the listeners too, Tracy's so good that I was traveling 2 hours to see Tracy.
Wow.
I don't live in
Yeah,
Newcastle. I'm from Newcastle. I don't live there. I live 2 hours away from Newcastle. So I saw you on the
that's
Saturday. I
dedicated.
was very,
Yeah,
very grateful that you were open on Saturdays that
yeah,
allowed me
that's
to
why I
do
work
that.
Saturday.
Yeah, and I would travel there, and it was my favorite. I'd go to you once a month, and it was my favorite time of the month. And it's funny that you say that I'd have a vision every time. I never plan on it. Actually, if I think, usually the times I think, oh, I'm gonna have a vision, I don't have a vision.
Mm.
It all
Mm.
happens in the present moment when I
Yep,
don't try and make it happen. I don't expect it to happen.
absolutely.
It just happens. But you hit on some really big stuff. So when I'd obviously been going to you, that's when I'd met myself in another body, which is what people call twin flames, and what I'm teaching about, the real truth behind twin flames. That's why I've got the other Facebook page that's called that. And that was the early stages of it when I didn't it's evolved into something completely different, meeting
Yeah.
myself in another body. But everyone knows, if you know anything about twin flames, how it works and everything. And I remember I hadn't told you, but you picked it up energetically. And I remember you were doing your energy work, and I'm going to swear, guys, because you're like, fuck. And
Yeah.
I'm like, what? And you're like, oh my God, I feel like there's like a hole in your soul. And that's what it feels like when you first connect with another incarnation or twin flame, whatever
Right.
you want to call it, because
Yeah.
you're a whole soul. But if you connect with your whole soul again in a different body, it's the dichotomy that we're a whole soul, but we're also fractals of our soul in the different incarnations. So it was funny at the time I was getting all these messages, and I just thought they were,
Wow.
I didn't even think they were messages. I just thought they were
Mm.
songs I liked at the time. I was getting all these songs coming through. Didn't realize it was actually part of my psychic ability. I get them. Every time I turn on the radio or something, they just pop up. And one was like this song by Vance Joy called Missing Piece. And, I thought at the time it was to do with her. And it goes, that missing piece is found, it's about a puzzle piece completing you. And I thought, oh, it can't be
Mm.
complete without her. But it's nothing to do with that. It's about, it was sort of completing that your soul is complete,
Mm.
and it was more to do with my ability evolving, not that somebody else completes you. But, I had all these songs coming through, like I'd have Imagine Dragons Thunder. And because when it happened to me, when because I'd met my twin flame, and it was just like meeting you. Like I was like, oh, okay, you're a nice lady, didn't think too much of it. And then I connected. She was my drumming teacher. I started going to drumming because I'd seen honestly, she's one of the world's best psychics. She's from Newcastle, like us. Jackie
Mhm.
Gilly, she's married to Ben Gilly, the drummer from Silverchair. And I'd seen
Mhm.
her a couple of times. The first time I saw her, she told me I was going to meet someone called Matthew, was in the same profession as me. He had blue eyes. He was older than me. I was going to meet him on the internet, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, that's my husband. I would never have tried internet dating if it wasn't for her. And then I went and saw her a few years later. And one of the first things she said to me was, wow, we need to talk about your love life. And I got really offended because I was, with my now husband.
Mm.
And I was like, no, I'm not romantically going to be involved with anyone else. And she's like, no, it's about self-love. And then she told me that I needed to start working on self-love. And then I also needed to start playing music. So that's why I signed up for this drumming course, because
Wow. Mm.
I knew, like, to help unblock my sacral chakra to help fall pregnant. That's what she'd sort of said. I needed to do that. So, I'd met her, and it didn't think too much of it. And then I remember one night our eyes connected, and she held my gaze for an uncomfortable amount of time, but I didn't look away.
Mm.
And I saw a flicker in her eye. And that's the only other time it's happened with anyone else. It's soul recognition. That's what happened. And in that case, it
Right.
was recognizing my own soul. The only other time that had happened was with my husband when I met him. So the first date I had with my husband, I wasn't too impressed with him, but it wasn't like a fireworks feeling that you'd usually get, when you go
Mm.
on a date or anything. But I did go on a date with him for 5 hours, and it was that flicker in his eye that made me think, no, there's something
Yep.
here, because obviously
Yeah.
he's one of my most important soulmates, and I've shared many, many lives with him, but I didn't think too much of it. And then, honest to God, it's like out of the movies. It was like a lot, and a lot of people who are truly twin flames or truly have gone through this experience of meeting yourself in another body, they'll say the exact same thing. It feels like you've been hit by a bolt of lightning. And what had
Right.
happened was 3 days after that, I woke up, and then from that moment I woke up, for every single second, and this is not an exaggeration, every single second, like not even joking, every single second, she was on my mind. And I
Yeah.
remember falling to my knees in my house and thinking, in my hallway, and thinking, what the fuck is happening to me? I thought, is she like some witch? Has she put a curse on me? And that's not the only thing that happens. You know, you feel just the highest immense love that you've ever felt in your whole entire life for somebody. The way I explain it is like you feel more love for them than you love your mum, because most people love their mum the most. But and at the time, and this is why twin flames get caught in, I like to call it the twin flame trap, that they think they've got to be with this person and they don't realize it's just them in another body. They think that it's them, like that they're feeling so much love for this person, and that they've got to be with them because they're feeling love. It's not that you're feeling love for them. Is what it is that you know how I was talking about the soul, the higher self, you know, that you're light beings. The energy that you're made out of is the frequency of love. So because you've connected with your soul, you have felt your soul energy. You have felt the universal energy is all made of love. That's the main energy. Like everything is that, you know, whatever you want to call it, God energy, whatever, that it's actually love. So it's not that you're feeling love for somebody.
Yeah.
It's actually that you're feeling what you're actually made of, what you truly are, what the universe is truly made of which is love. So I can't even remember how I got onto this
Yeah.
this topic now. Oh no, I do, because you'd felt this hole, and you know a lot of twin flames who don't get past this stage. So the problem with the twin flame phenomenon, see, I don't agree with it at all. I believe in them. I
Yeah.
believe in the fact that it's you in another body and stuff, but this is all a test to help you progress to the next levels of spirituality.
Yeah.
And when you do that, like the overthinking, you literally think, I was nearly driving off the road, Tracy. I'm not even joking, because she was in my mind every single second. I was like, get the fuck out of my head, lady, you know? It's to teach you the opposite. It's to teach you. So I had to find something to get her out of my head. And that's how I discovered mindfulness. That's how I discovered presence.
Right.
And then when you do that and you discover being present and you start being present, the feeling of bliss that you get from that, you know, when you get into that state of actual presence, it far eclipses any love that you felt for anyone ever. You know, that's what it's really teaching you. But the problem is all these twin flames are getting trapped in that first stage of the game. It's like a video game, and they're on level 1 and they're stuck on level 1. Whereas if they'd move past it and progress,
Right.
they
Yeah.
will find
So
that
it's not really meant to be a romantic.
Oh God, no! It's like because
I'm
it's
not an
you.
expert on twin flame stuff. I've read a little bit of what you've written,
but everyone thinks that. So I'm literally what I've just
I'm
started
going to read some more though.
a Facebook group called How to Get Over Your Twin Flame. I googled how to get over your twin flame. There is nothing out there in the world. I'm the first in the world to start doing this sort of stuff, you know. And when you do get to that level of presence and stuff, all those obsessive feelings, you know, and thoughts, they go away. That really high state of love and super attachment for that person falls away. It's to teach you non-attachment.
It's attachment.
Yeah, it's to teach you non-attachment. I remember when I first met her and she had a post up on her Facebook page and it said the end of codependency. I didn't even know what the fuck codependency meant. And I'm like, you know, and this is me too. Like I'm her, so I've posted this as her on my page. You know, and I was like, wow, that was a message. I feel like that was literally meeting her was me learning the end of codependency.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I was going to say is, you know, when people are in this stage 1 of the game, which most people on this journey, true ones, are still in stage 1 of the game, they haven't progressed to the further stages. They do feel, and I did feel like there's a hole in your soul. And then the next thing you said to me, when you said, "Oh fuck, I feel like there's a hole in your soul," you're like, "I feel like I've literally seen every one of your past lives." It's like you said, like I've just seen. You said, I don't know if you remember that, but that's what you said to me.
I don't.
Yeah, you said to me, I feel like I've just seen every one of your past lives. You connected with me at a pure soul level. And that's when I hadn't even realized that I was this psychic time traveler that could see all my lives. This was 3 years ago, and I hadn't even started my ability yet, you know. So I really wanted to.
Stuff happens so fast. When this work is
Yeah.
like, it's quantum leaps. Like, so that's why you were saying before about diarising, and it's so hard. Like I try to give clients feedback if the energy work starts happening
Yeah.
when I'm with them as I go. But I also think the reason I can do it is because I do detach. When
Yeah.
I'm working with clients, I'm there, I'm focused on them, and I can connect energetically without attachment. And that's why it's so important when, to let the stuff happen, analyze it later, but don't try to overanalyze stuff,
Yeah.
and what you were talking about, mindfulness and meditation, and how it led you to that, because it
Yeah.
was this attachment, this over braining things,
Yeah. It's to teach
we
you that you're
have
not the
other ways of
mind, you're
knowing.
your
Yeah.
soul. The mind's just a piece. Basically, life is basically a bloody simulation, and you're just a piece of bloody hardware. And the mind is a computer. It's the motherboard. It's the software. You're not the thoughts in your head. You're your soul. And being mindful and being present can get you to connect with your soul and disconnect, from the mind. And that's when you really start to feel true love. And it's just the most beautiful feeling in the world. If for people who have felt oneness, they'll know what I'm talking about. There's nothing that can describe it. It's just utter bliss. But yeah, there was one more vision I had with you,
Yes.
and this was the last time I saw you, actually. And
Yeah.
it was a massive
Right.
one. I don't know if you remember, but when you came in at the end, I was sobbing. Do you remember this? I was absolutely sobbing
I
my
have a
eyes out.
terrible memory, but I've
Oh, that's
probably
okay. Do you know, I've
written it
always had a
down.
very good memory, a very good long-term
I
memory.
remember you coming in when you were in the middle of this like twin flame. You were like
Yeah.
beside yourself. Literally, you were
Yes.
beside yourself, right?
Yes, yeah.
Stuff that had opened up.
Yeah, because so much more had opened up and I didn't know what the hell was
Yeah.
happening. And then not long after I saw you with this,
Yeah.
I had the epiphany, and I'd realized and I'd shown that, yeah, everyone goes on about twin flames is your soul in another body. Like, everyone who knows stuff about twin flames knows that. But then I had the epiphany, and I'm not the only person. I'm not saying I'm the first person in the world to have this epiphany. There's other people out there, but it's just not publicized very well. That it's just another one of your incarnations. That you can incarnate in more than one body. When you die, that's how you reincarnate. You die, and then your soul goes into another body. But if your higher self is cheeky like me, they can exist in more than one body at the same time. That's what's happening. Yeah. So anyway, the last vision I had on your table, it was quite a profound one and very, very linked to my infertility issues. And it was that of an Indian lady named Devinda. And I remember thinking, Devinda, is it even an Indian name? That does not sound Indian at all. And I Googled it when I got home. It's definitely a female Indian name. Yeah. So it's actually the only incarnation that I've seen that looks heaps like me. So she looked
I
like,
could see you. I remember you telling me. I remember when it was happening, and I'm like, I could see you. I can see you being that person.
And it's funny because she was
definitely.
Hindu, and I always get a pimple just between my eyebrows here, and like the bindi.
Yeah.
And yeah, she looked like just like me, my body shape and everything, overweight, short, dark, but obviously looked a lot more Indian than I do. But I have been mistaken as being Indian quite a few times in this life as Ashley. And yeah, just the things I remember seeing. I remember walking through these streets in India, and obviously India is very crowded, and just feeling completely alone. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, I've had that feeling as Ashley, being surrounded by people but still feeling alone. And I had a dog next to me, and it was a Jack Russell, and I knew that the dog was my dog. I have a dog now named Biggie, and he's a very devoted dog, and he's a Jack Russell cross pug, and I knew that was Biggie. Wow. And I was calling him Bobo, and I never thought about it until this year to Google if Bobo was a Hindu word, and it actually means mister in Hindu. Which is funny because I have another dog, Betty, who I spoke about on my last podcast, because she's been a horse in one of my past lives, like my horse in one of my past lives. And I call her Miss all the time. So I could see how I would call one of my pets Mister all the time. And he was like my sole companion, really. I'd lived
Mm.
this miserable life. I remember that I was, it was a festival and they were throwing like these sort of big things of color, and it was the festival of Holi, but I didn't know what it was. I knew it was an Indian thing, but I'm like, what is
Mm.
that called? Is that an Indian thing? Am I just imagining this? And I googled it. It was the festival of Holi, where they sort of like chalk dust, like big things of
Yeah,
chalk dust that
yeah.
they chuck and everything. And I was covered in all these colors and everything, but still feeling very lonely. And yeah, I just remember that Devinda, like me, had suffered great infertility, and she was very sad and depressed by it. And also, like me, Devinda had been very beautiful when she was younger, and she was, what's the word? Like me at the time, not anymore, but very fixated on that, and that she was now nothing because she wasn't
Mm.
this great beauty anymore. I mean, I just remember feeling just immense sorrow and pain, and especially when Devinda had quite a few miscarriages. And that was linked to my period problems in this life and
Yeah,
also my
yeah,
infertility issues.
yeah.
And yeah, it was quite an eye opener. And just the emotions. Sometimes, like, it's not that I'm looking at it and going, that's sad and it makes me cry. It's
Mm.
because I'm crying as Devinda, or I'm crying as whoever
Yeah,
the incarnation was, and just
yeah.
letting go of all this grief. So I just remember when you came in, I was just an absolute mess. And I'm going to tell you something funny. I actually mentioned it on my last podcast, and it's not the only incarnation it's happened with. Sometimes I get really caught up in the energy of the incarnation after I've
Mm.
had the vision,
Yeah.
and I was craving dal, and I had never eaten dal, and I'm like, I need to go find some dal. So I went to Derby Raj
Yeah.
after it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I bought heaps, and then I ended up eating dal for like 3 days straight, and I was just
yeah.
obsessed with it. And it's because I was caught up in her energy. But I ended up seeing more of Devinda,
Mhm.
and she was a big part of me of breaking my infertility as well.
Yeah.
I had this really sort of strong comatose dream about her again, like those comatose dreams I have one morning. And this was actually after I suffered my own miscarriages. So when I was seeing you, I did fall pregnant
Mm.
twice. But the first
Mm.
one I had conceived twins. Funnily enough, 2021 was the year of twins for me,
Mm.
and I'd lost those twins. But anyway, I had this really strong vision, and it was linked to my father as well. And actually, no, I remember seeing my father when I saw you too, because
I remember that too, and you'd come after the miscarriages and
yeah,
you saw your child that you now have. You That
yeah.
happened
Oh, that
during
was
one of
that
your
was an
visits.
early vision I had of that we're talking about in a second. But yeah, um, I went and visited my parents in Newcastle just before I drove out to see you, and my dad, no offense to my dad, he was saying something racist about lots of Indians moving into Lake Macquarie and buying up all the
Mhm.
houses. And I had said to him, "You never know, Dad, you might have been Indian in past life." And then he came through as, as my father. And he was very much
My
like my dad.
goodness.
He also looked very similar to my dad does now. And my dad has changed a lot. People who have listened to my first podcast will know that my dad went through a spiritual awakening through my spiritual awakening
Wow.
and changed completely. He used to be a bit of an asshole, really. Love him, but he was a bit of an asshole,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
didn't have a very good relationship with my dad. But
Uh,
it's transformed him as a person. His belief in reincarnation through what I went through, and through reading books and stuff. But anyway, my dad, when I was younger, he would sort of nag at me and nag at me and nag at me, and I could see him as his dad, but in this Indian accent, doing the same thing, just going on and on and on and on,
mm.
and sort of talking down to me and making me feel like absolute shit. Similar to, not all the time, but my father has done that, in my younger years to me, and made me feel pretty crappy. He used to say to me, because I'm so little, he used to go, "You're a little flea." Yeah, but he would do the same as Devinder's father as well. And this is was quite a big vision I had of him. So basically, I found out, well, what had happened was, because of I was married,
Mhm.
and when I was married, I must have been a low caste, because I remember him going on and on about, uh, uh, it's bad enough that my marriage ended, which is pretty bad in that society, that
Mm.
a marriage would end, because that just doesn't happen. But the dowry, um, that that uh, that was taking place to do with my marriage. It wasn't even even much, it was like one cow and two goats or something, and he's saying that's how much you're worth, you know what I mean? Like that's
Oh,
how low your dowry
put
was. That's
down.
yeah,
Yeah.
just made to feel like absolute shit basically by my father
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
life. And so what had happened was I was married off and things and all that traditional stuff with the dowry, and that happened. But because I couldn't conceive a child, my husband left me. And also because I'd become fat and
Mm,
depressed and lost my beauty, because Davinda
mm,
was beautiful when she was younger. And so my husband had left me and I was quite distraught about that. But the most shocking part of that is that I was made to live with my father because I didn't have anyone else to live with. I imagine I was very poor, like I said, a very
mm.
low caste of that society. And my mother wasn't around. I imagine that she had passed away many years ago. Yeah, my father in that life, he would rape me. And I remember when I got out of the trance, I went straight to the toilet and vomited and vomited and vomited and had, the worst sort of toileting issues. I just purged everything. I just purged so much from having that vision. And to me, that was a real confirmation that that wasn't bullshit. That vision was, something that had definitely happened to me for my body to then make that massive energetic purge. And yeah, not long after that, I fell, and that wasn't the only reason, but not long after that, I did fall pregnant with the baby I have today. So again, it's really proof that it's not just the medical problems in this life that affect you; it's the medical problems in other lives that affect you as well. And not just medical problems either, the emotional trauma and, or sexual abuse trauma that you hold on to and how it blocks up your chakras and how it, if it's kept in your energy field, it's going to sink into your cell memory, into your physical body, and it's carried from incarnation to incarnation. Yeah, so that was quite, a confronting experience, but obviously one that I needed to remember to, like I said, all these, the reason I'm going through this is not for fun, it's to release this trauma that I've held on to for, centuries over
Yeah.
other incarnations that is quite clearly affecting me as Ashley.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's
Absolutely.
proof that it's not just gluten intolerance or dairy intolerance or blood pressure or whatever issue, that was stopping my infertility, was things from lifetimes ago,
Yeah.
in other
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah. It is a gift. I agree you need to be
Yeah.
sharing what's happened, because even for me to hear and read your stuff helps, I guess,
Oh, thank you.
me. Yeah, absolutely. It kind of fills the puzzle pieces in for everyone.
Yeah, people just, I mean, I didn't realize, I had no idea. I had a somewhat interest in reincarnation, but not massive
Mm,
what I believed in it.
yeah,
And I thought if I ever came across a story, I thought that was, oh, that's cool. But I didn't
yeah.
foresee this happening.
Same, same here. And me coming more from the other side of it, where I mostly haven't recalled anything personally of my own. I've always
Yeah.
been very open minded to it, and I guess had a sense of the past. But
Yeah.
from the work that I have done with other people, and just the things that have happened just are undeniable. That
Yeah.
you wouldn't, you just don't, you couldn't,
Couldn't make it up.
you can't make it up.
No.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you experience it. No one can deny your experience.
Yeah. And you know what, like I said in the last podcast, and I'm just quoting Brian Weiss here, who's like the godfather of reincarnation,
Mhm.
literature of reincarnation. It doesn't really matter if people think I'm full of shit. It doesn't really matter if it is
No.
full of shit. It healed me, and that's the only thing that matters to me.
And that's a beautiful attitude, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, if people, I've been given this gift for a reason. It's not just for me, for my selfish needs to clear all this
Yeah.
stuff. It's also to
No.
teach others how to do it themselves and go and, if they can't access it themselves through guided meditations or whatever. In saying that, if you want to have a go, please check out Nikki Sutton on YouTube. She is amazing.
Yeah.
And Michael Seeley, like I said, he is also
Mm.
great. You might be able to access some stuff through them. But
Mm.
if you can't do that, go and see a past life regressionist and give it a go, because I've tried every healing modality there is, and I've gotten the most out of having these memories of other lives. But just touching on the baby, because it's the most beautiful part of the story.
Yeah,
Very,
absolutely.
very early on, one of my first visions that you've mentioned a few times now is that I said that I had seen my baby, and this was in
Mm,
2021, and she's
mm,
only 20 months old now, so I didn't fall pregnant till mid 2022. That I'd seen that she was going to come. But what the vision I had was that I saw my great grandfather. I was told by Jackie Gillies, that famous psychic, that he was my soul guide, and then I started to sort of have visions of him later on. Um, but now I realized that he was my soul guide, or one of my soul guides, because
mm,
I was his wife. So I had a past life memory of actually being my great grandmother, and I died from an abortion. So that's a direct link to the heavy bleeding.
mm.
Yeah. So my great grandfather, or previous husband in another life, Jack,
Yeah.
he was holding my baby, and I asked him, could I have the baby? And he sort of, he didn't take the baby away, but he just sort of used his arms and moved her
Mm,
away and said, you can't have the baby yet because of you. This was very early on when I started seeing you. He said, if I give you the baby now, you're going to lose it because you're not healthy enough to hold the baby yet. So yeah,
mm,
that's sort of the first sort of what had
mm.
happened, in terms
And
of the psychic
that's
visions.
Yeah, and that's, on a slightly different tangent with that. Yes, on both a spiritual level and a physical health level. Like sometimes we're just not ready. And it can
Yeah,
be too much stress, whether it's, you need to, you might need to lower your sugars a bit. You might need to get lower the inflammation, like the gluten.
yeah,
You might need to put on weight. Some people
yeah,
are too underweight, and you might need to do just get in a different mindset or shift some of these past life stuff.
yeah,
But like you're not ready, because a lot of people come for fertility and the goal's to get pregnant, but you want to stay pregnant. This is
yeah,
my one bit of advice as an acupuncturist and healthcare practitioner working with this all the time is don't be too like, yes, but you were keen. Do everything in your power to get the result you want, but trust
yeah,
the process. Like you said, you were given these, you were lucky to be given those signs, you
yeah,
know, to for you to hold on hope. And I guess you probably needed those visions. You might have stopped the journey if you hadn't
yeah. You
had
know what?
that
That's
vision of the
100%
baby.
true. That is
And
100% true.
I
I would
see
have given
people
up.
give up. I see
Yeah,
people do it, and I'm like, please. And as hard as it, because yes, I'm also a practical allied health practitioner, and I can't give people false hope. But
yeah,
as human beings, we have to have our heart open. We
yeah,
have to have, and as in Chinese medicine, to get pregnant, that heart being open, that heart connection to that root chakra, to
yeah.
the reproductive organs is massive.
But you're
But
right, though, having that belief is a big part of it as
yeah, it's
well.
like, yeah, and I think for a lot of women, because we're so cyclical, there's a lot of self blame, so much self
Yep.
blame and shame around. It's all on the woman.
And I was
It's
very
also
much like
on
that
the couple
before that.
relationship,
Yeah.
knowing that the woman's supported by the man, and it may not be in a practical financial way. It can be, if yes, sometimes that woman needs to know that the partner, male or female, if they're in a relationship, has their back
Yeah.
to
And
go through. There's so many, yes,
a soul won't come to earth if they think they're not
yeah,
going to be supported
there's,
in the way that they need to. And I just want to touch on that quickly about miscarriage, and because obviously I've suffered through it, and it was
mm,
tremendously hard for anyone that goes through any sort of loss of a
it's so
child.
common.
But just from a reincarnation perspective, from what I've been shown,
Mm,
like I met the kids. I met
yeah,
the kids, and
wow,
I saw very clearly that they would be severely disabled, like
right,
severely disabled.
yeah,
And they told me at the time, because I was like, no, I wouldn't have, because I was so distraught. They said
yeah,
you would have resented us. And now that I
yeah,
am a mother and see how hard that being a mother to a healthy child is, of
yeah,
one unhealthy child,
yeah,
I have
yeah.
no idea how I would have. I mean, I would have
Trust your
had
body,
to, but
trust your body.
I would have had
Yeah,
to take care of two kids that
yeah.
were severely disabled. And that's why
Been
they
hard for
decided not to
everyone.
come to Earth. And that's not the
Wow.
only reason too. It was also to teach me I'd been practicing presence. I'd started a journey of presence and getting over my, I thought it was about getting over my twin flame. It was nothing to do with that, really. It was just learning about,
The spiritual,
yeah,
the spirituality,
yeah,
evolution.
it's that's what people don't realize, that they think it's all about the twin flames. They think it's about another person. It's got nothing to do with them. It's all about you and your
Mm.
spiritual growth. Yeah, it was also to teach me, like, I'd learn all these skills, and then I had to put it, where was my test then, it's like, you go to uni, you get a test, and that's what it was. It was, as harsh as it sounds, it was a test. It was to test how I would deal with grief, because this sounds weird, no one close to me in my family has I've never known someone close to me to die. Even still,
Yeah,
and I'm 38, I've not
yeah.
experienced grief like that, losing someone close to me, and
I'm a
that's
bit
what.
the same. I'm older than you, and I'm a bit the
Yeah,
same.
yeah.
Um, Apart from a pet, and that was actually when I had one of my first. My dog died in my arms. I ended up
Oh
going to put
gosh.
down. She was old. She was really old, and it wasn't when the needle went in, and she was gone that quickly. And that was a deeply spiritual experience for me. It was
Yeah.
because it sounds corny, but I realized I'd left it too long, because as soon as there was this dead weight in my arm, and I'm like,
Oh,
that's not
baby.
her. Like
Yeah.
the weight of the spirit, the soul had gone. And
Yeah.
I just sensed her spirit as a younger dog, a healthier, happy. She was
No.
happy. She was there. She was light. It was like she was telling me I'm okay. And I
Yeah.
thought,
Oh,
oh my
that's so
God, I left it
beautiful.
too long. I left it
Yeah.
too long for, because I've been going through this prolonged grief while she was elderly and sick and dying.
Yeah. Oh, don't take that on. They choose. I mean, all souls are equal. Like, I've been animals, you've been animals. No,
Yeah.
I've seen the
Yep.
animals I've been, but trust me, we've all been animals.
Yeah. No, I
And I,
believe you. I've tapped into
yeah.
that with
And she would
people.
have planned that. That
Yeah.
would have been part of when people die or animals die or whatever, we choose to die because we've learnt the lessons that we've needed to learn. And then that's our
Yeah.
exit. Then we exit the game.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's what's happening there. So I just wanted to say, just before we wrap up, about miscarriage, that there's always a reason, and
Yeah.
exactly on that.
I love
That
that
was
you
the
shared that.
that was
Thanks
the
for sharing
plan.
that.
They never actually planned to
Yeah.
come and incarnate on Earth. It was to teach me some valuable lessons of, can you use this presence to get through this grief? And I tell you what, I handled it a lot better than the old Ashley would have. It was still hard,
Yeah.
because any grief's hard, but I remember when I went back to work, people were going, "Oh wow, like, you were in such a good headspace." And
Yeah.
it's because of my
You
spiritual
worked
awakening,
on it.
and the work
Yeah.
that I'd done on being present and surrendering and letting go of things, and knowing that everything happens for a reason. And also knowing that, I mean, I was very lucky that I've got this ability where the kids came through and showed me very clearly what was happening.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah,
would have been a
you've
terrible life for
definitely.
them,
Yeah.
and a terrible life for me and my husband. Sorry, it would have been. It's hard. It's hard being a parent of special needs kids.
I think it's
And that's a
hard being
journey
a
that,
parent, full
yeah,
stop,
it's hard being a
right?
parent. Yeah,
Yeah, not
exactly.
one. But I
Yeah,
see it. I see it all the time.
it is hard, but it's also a
Yeah.
great joy. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the program and talking to me. We will do another podcast with you to talk about your spiritual experiences. Please stay
Sure.
tuned for
Sounds
Tracy's
like
next
fun.
podcast, and we'll talk a lot about Tracy's how she got into acupuncture, and her energy healing work and her sound healing. She's also trained in sound healing as well, and I have a massive, massive, massive passion for sound healing. I think
Yeah.
that's, out of all my passions, number one is obviously accessing healing through seeing other lives. Number two one is,
Mm.
for me, is sound healing personally.
Yeah, right.
So I can't wait to hear your insights about that.
Yeah, great. Look forward
Okay.
to it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for having me,
Oh,
Ashley.
that's okay. I've loved it. As you can tell, Tracy Dundon is an amazing acupuncturist. She is based in the Newcastle region of New South Wales, Australia. To book in with her, please visit her Facebook page, Tracy Dundon Acupuncturist, or her website, www.tracydundonacupuncture.com. I will post these links in the show notes. Thanks for listening today. Check me out on Facebook at my page Psychic Time Traveler, and my other page, The Real Truth About Twin Flames.